Bro, this is super exciting. Okay. Welcome to the Purpose Driven Podcast. My name is Geno. I'm here with one of my really good friends, Michael Ivanov. Super excited. We kind of grew up together, know each other mutually, just a lot of friends around us. And aside from my wife doing the first introduction of this podcast, Mike's the first one on. So pretty stoked. Happy to have you here, man. Share a little bit about yourself. Share a little bit about your book. We'll dig into it a little bit more. And I'll just let you take it away, man.
Appreciate you having me on, man. I know we're like-minded in a lot of ways, and even as far as our background, coming from from Ukraine,
Russia,
from Russia, yeah.
Close
Back
enough.
then it was all Soviet Union. When we,
that's all the same thing.
That's when we left. It was all Soviet Union. But I write, I speak. I have my books. I'm working on a 5th book right now. I have 4 books out, and I use my writing to help market my speaking. I use my speaking to help market my writing. So it's it's inspiration. It's in that industry, motivational speaking, writing. That I always look at it as a combined theme. The whole goal, the whole idea is to wake people up to their potential. I was in I needed it. I was in a place where I needed a little bit waking up. I was just living this life where I was just doing what people told me to do. I went to school because
that's what
they told me to go to school. And just to get my dad off my back. And so I kind of learned that came to this moment in my life where I was working for a small printing company, and the job there was I was literally sitting in a 5x5 cubicle and pushing paper for this company. I was just absolutely depressed, miserable, living for the weekend, that typical story, coming in on Monday, counting down the days till Friday.
Dude, trust me, I know what that's like.
Exactly. And, Sunday evening rolls around and the depression starts setting in because, you gotta go to work.
You're pissed off when you wake up the Monday morning, just on your way to work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I would say a pretty rich history because as far as where I came from, meaning, I come from a family of fighters. My grandfather fought in Leningrad in World War II in the siege of Leningrad. Then he was in a Dachau concentration camp for 4 years, and until the Americans, came liberated the camps. And my dad, there was a lot of discrimination against faith-based people at that time as well. And so I come from that. Like I come from parents that had to live through that, grandparents and all these stories. And here I was, this kid and living in America with all the opportunity that we have, and I'm depressed and miserable. And it was a big wake up call for me, and I really had to start thinking about, okay, what do I have to offer to the world? What's my purpose? What are those talents that I'm burying, and how do I find that out very quickly before I waste more of my life?
Yep, and you did that really well in the book. And I'll get to it. And the fact that you kind of drew into it is good because I was curious about what prompted it, right? What initially came from it. But I think really the exciting part for me is watching before we get into it. And I'd love for you to kind of share the name of the book. And the first one is the first one I read. Is doing this where you said we have some similar dynamics in the family. Like we grew up together, a big family out of the Soviet. Everybody grew up. We kind of grew up in a similar neighborhood. I know where you guys lived, and I really actually got acquainted with you guys through your cousin, through Yuri. I actually met Andre first, and then just to watch it all over. Like, man, I met him in the early 2000s when I was in high school, and then he went off in the military. I went off and just completely took a different path in my life. Ended up, kind of getting back on track probably about the last 7 or 8 years or so. But to come back to it and see like, oh shoot, like this guy came up out of the same exact groundwork as we did, and how much he's advanced, especially for our community, right? You don't have in our community, it's like, well, you're a truck driver or you're in construction business. But to go back and say, you know what, I'm going to kind of defy the odds. I'm going to take this direction because you know what, I truly believe that the gifts, the talents that we're given could do something different aside from your mundane, and actually do it in a form of excellence rather than just getting by, right?
Yeah.
So that I will give you credit there. You posted something about a year ago, and I reshared it on my story. And somebody that was following me, I can't even tell you what it was. chimes in and they start responding. I'm like, dude, if you're not already following this guy, you need to. He's gonna blow up in like the next year or two. And then it's just like I said to you this morning, I'm like, bro, your social media went wild in the last 2. You went from having like several thousand followers to like 12,000 over the course of like 2 weeks. I'm like, dude, what is this guy doing? So, man, really proud of you. Big, and especially here's the other thing: is like nobody really sees the behind the scenes stuff. And as you know, a self-employed guy, as an entrepreneur, I recognize the time and the efforts and the energy and the resources that went into it, because you bury so much of yourself into it. You have to still make time for your wife. You have to make time for your family. You have to make time for everything else. So, man, mad props. I give you credit. The book was fantastic. Tell me a little bit about the first one, or why don't you tell a little bit about what prompted it, what specifically, how you went about it.
Yeah. So going a little bit back to that job that, I had to start asking myself questions, like what am I doing? What do I have to offer to the world? What are those gifts, skills, talents, abilities? And I picked up a book. I got heavily into personal development. We actually joined an MLM. So MLM is but it did not work out.
That'll
for
make
me.
you rethink things.
Yes, it did. Yeah, it did not work out well for me at all. But it got us thinking, because we all of a sudden we're surrounded. We're going to conferences, and everyone at the conferences, there's motivational speakers. And everyone's talking about being, not exchanging hours for dollars. Like everyone's talking about what, you in this industry, you can work and make money, make residual income. Yep. And so even though that didn't work out for me, I was in that environment. So it already got me thinking, like, what am I, what can I do to where it's like something I enjoy doing, but I'm, earning income while I'm sleeping, that kind of a thing. And so it got me thinking. And around that, and they were heavily pushing personal development books. And I picked up a book called The Better Way to Live by a man named Geno. And I'm sure you've heard me share this story several times, but yeah, Geno, he'd already passed away like long before, I even got into this thing. So I picked up his book. He wrote all his books in story form. So like fictional stories, but with life principles. And this book changed everything for me, like my perspective, how I was thinking about life. And I was like, that's what I want to do. Like, if I can write something, I can put something together, some kid years down the road, like I'm gone, some kid picks up a book and it helps transform their life. I'm like, not only can I, do something where I'm earning income, but it's truly impacting people and it's leaving a legacy. And a big thing to me that drew me to speaking, to writing, was the fact that I've always wanted to do something of myself. I don't know, call it egotistic or whatever. That's good. But like, I've always wanted to do something bigger. And all of a sudden it like clicked for me. It's just like, I could do that. Like, I can't do that because I don't know how to do it, but like I can try to do that. And so I wasn't a writer. I wasn't a speaker. We talked about this a little bit before we started recording. I ran on my speech class in college because, I got stuck in the middle of a speech. And so,
matter of fact, share on that before you go ahead. Share because I think it's a common misconception. That's actually something I wanted to run by you. I think that's a common misconception of someone that's a speaker, somebody that's a writer, that has the public ability to engage. And I think a lot of that is overlooked. People just assume it's just a naturally God-given talent. And I'll tell you, it's not. From how many times we've done shots, and I know from you, from a guy that gets on stage, and I see that your audiences keep getting bigger. Tell me, what's that like? Because I know that didn't come overnight.
It takes a lot of work. The important thing to me was like, I knew where I was going then. I knew I wanted to speak and write because Agmendino, his book, and then he was also a speaker. So I'm like, that's what I want to do. And so I had this dream, I had this destination all of a sudden, but I have no idea how to get there. And so that, look, you're talking about, it's a misconception that, this came naturally to me. It's like, it was the furthest thing from it. Cause then, I think when I just started going, like my first quarter in college, I had to take a communications class, and it was happened to be a public speaking class. Our first assignment is a 3-minute speech. That's all it was. Like, you get up and talk for 3 minutes about anything.
Dude, 3 minutes is a long time when you're doing a speech.
When you're terrified.
When you're terrified.
Yeah, so my turn comes up. Like my hands are shaking, like sweating, like the classic, just not having, and I was like a late bloomer. So I was already kind of like insecure, and, this is college, we've got all the senior girls in the class. And so I get up in front of the class, I'm looking at everyone, they're looking back at me, and it just like, I don't remember what I said, how I started. I'm talking, and then middle of my talk, I just my mind just goes blank. I don't know. Yeah. And I don't remember what I just said. I don't know what I'm supposed to say next. I always make a joke. I'm always like, if you ask me my name at that point, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you. Just total. And like my ears turned red and I walked out of the classroom. And I talked to my counselor the next day and I was like, I'm not coming back to that. Yeah. Give me something else. But
do you, here's an odd question. Do you have a line you fall onto when you blank like that? Because sometimes when I'm like when I'm with the students, or sometimes I'm on stage, and granted, I'm not doing it to the degree that you are, but I'll blank and I'll have something that I'll immediately try to fall onto and be like, and try to, because I know I just completely lost it.
Yeah.
Or do you feel like you're comfortable enough where you can just pick up right away now?
Yeah. So now I'm comfortable enough. Yeah. So now what I'll do is if I do blink a little bit and I don't remember exactly what my next point was, what I'll do is I'll kind of repeat myself. Mm-hmm. And I'll kind of either slow myself down and repeat it as if I'm really trying to make the point. But what I do is I'll repeat myself what I just said, to kind of like make sure their audiences understand I'm driving the point. And then usually by then, because I repeated what I just said, I remember where I was going with that, where I'm going next.
Yeah.
But yeah, by no means did it come naturally for me. But that's what I always talk about. Like that's the power of knowing where you're headed. Mm-hmm. It's just like, a lot of times people will talk about, I'm just not motivated. Like I want to do this, but I'm not motivated. And it's like, I don't know, like I never struggle with motivation because I don't understand it, because it's like when you know what it is, where it is that you're headed, like you're going to do what you need to do. You're going to learn what you need to learn. You're going to face whatever fears you're going to need to face, and you're going to figure it out. Granted, I do procrastinate every once in a while, especially when I sit down to write, but you know where you're headed. And I think that's because people just have lack of clarity. It's like they have a goal or a dream that they have, but it's vague. It's not not specific. And so when something's not specific, it's really hard to know what you need to do and find the motivation to do it.
Yeah.
And so
so I guess that kind of brings the next question. So there's got to be a pretty high failure rate, right? In terms of because you got two different things between speaking and then actually the book writing. Mm-hmm. I think, my opinion, call me out or correct me if I'm wrong, but my guess is in something that requires that much of your personal development, because you have so much people that are, with technology going the way it is, they're more leaning towards something that's social media based, sales based, as opposed to being, hey, it's on my heart to speak. This is what God's given me. This is what I really want to expand on. My guess is, the failure rate on something like that, where you're consistently having to work yourself, is going to be pretty high. Did you ever find yourself, if it's not a failure rate, did you have a point where you felt like is this like where it's questionable to you at that point? Like, is this something I'm doing? Am I really going to carry through with this? Yeah. Like, how much further do I have to spin my wheels before I call it quits?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was like a thing, man. That was big, and honestly, even up to where a year ago, where things really started going for us, because we'd get speaking engagement, every once in a while. And it was like, my wife and I, we work so hard to get that one, so what we're doing is we're doing all of our own outreach. Mm-hmm. Speaking it's an industry, like I don't compare it. I wouldn't say I don't compare it. It's like trying to break into Hollywood. It's like selling everything you have. You hear those stories, people, and just hope that you get picked up. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because it's such a competitive thing. And usually when you think of motivational speaker, it's somebody that had a massive successful business, or they're an ex-athlete, or they were on a TV show or something like that.
Jocko, you're David Goggins.
Exactly. So they already have.
You're a Navy SEAL. You had that background.
Yeah. So they already have a platform that they start with. They already have attention. They have eyes, and now it's about doing the business side of it. Yeah. And for me, it's just like who's Michael? No one knows who I am, but I still have this dream, and so it's like for me, it's like I just had to make that decision. Like, well, I'm going to figure it out. And there was a lot of times, where I'm just like, I never once considered quitting, because like it's no plan B for me. Honestly, it was just like I know where I'm going, and I know that this is a dream that God placed on my heart, because it came to me at the time when I was begging for answers, and I was looking for answers, and I was knocking and asking and seeking, and I got that response. So I knew it was from God, and I knew that that's what I needed to do. It just wasn't happening as quickly as I thought it was going to happen, and I got a lot of rejection emails and a whole lot of things, a whole lot of the business side of it that I had to learn, in order to make it happen for me. So there was a lot of moments where it's like,
was there a time where there was maybe a little bit of hesitation or resistance from family and friends, where you were like, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna write a book. I'm gonna be a writer now.
No, I wouldn't say. And if there was, no one said it. I mean, I think in our family we're pretty dang close and supportive.
You guys are tight.
So even if there was, lack of confidence in me, I think people, like our family kind of just like let them figure it out. Worst case, if it doesn't work out, yeah.
I guess the moment that question came out of my mind, I could almost see Andre just yelling it into your head. don't quit, bro. I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. So I'm definitely blessed with that. But I've had friends where it's just like, they won't say it with the words because they're also smarter than that. But you could see by lack of support, lack of like, I'd be talking about this and I started getting passionate about wanting to write or working on this book. And there's just like no response, kind of like a blank, kind of like, what else, kind of a move on to the, and it's just like, I could feel that it's like there was no interest in it or it was not that there was no interest. It was like, I mean, I don't think it's going to work out.
I think from the consumer's perspective, I think they appreciate the book or the speaking or the engagement for what it is, but nobody really appreciates everything that went into it on the back end. Like for me, like I look into it, I'm like, I don't care what form of business you're in. I respect the hustle more than the actual point of achievement, right? Like you're like, okay, right now I feel like I'm winning. Like I'm really cruising right now. In the very same way, like I'm 6 years in, I'm 6 years in here in a couple months, and my business didn't really start to move until like year 4. And all of a sudden you're like, man, like everything you've sold in the last year has been like, and it has, it's a top dollar amount, but I'm like, bro, you have no idea. There was months where it's like, I didn't get paid for like 4, 5, 6 months. I have children. I have a wife. I got bills to pay. Like the grind that had to take place on the back end in order for it to come together is the most respectful part for me. And that's kind of like, most people don't know that.
I wish people harped on that a little bit more. You see a lot of speakers, you see a lot of podcasts, like inspirational stuff where it's just like they're talking about hard work, they're talking about persistence, but it's like I wish more like people who are, like some of the bigger names would spend a little bit more time talking about like how long it's going to take too, because we're also in a world right now where if it's not quick, if it's not immediate, they've already moved on to the next. People have moved on to the next thing, and it's just like that process is it takes so long to build momentum, and
take momentum, but also know that as to some degree, you're getting crushed at that point, right? And to walk with confidence, right? To still wake up in the morning, to still face your client and be like, completely tell them everything with full confidence that it's going to come together, and it's your only client, and you're praying it doesn't fall apart, and you're like, God, please don't, please. Like, I know this thing's falling apart. Just whatever you do, please don't let it fail. And then it does fail, and you're like, you're totally bummed, you're crushed, and you look back like 6 months later, you're like, you know what? Actually, that was a good learning point. I needed that because it kind of projected me forward. So I think that's huge. And just like you said, most people, not only do they not talk about it, it's almost like a selling point. Like, hey, I did this, I'll sell you an ebook.
That's true. That's how you can do it too in the next 3 months.
This is how you can do it.
And that's why it's important to commit. Like you have to have like a resolve, like, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and commit to it. Because I look at it in two ways. You almost have to have that childlike faith too, that it could blow up too. Because honestly, if you didn't, like when I'm sitting there writing that book for months, the only thing that keeps me going is like, hey, this could blow up.
Was there a time that was like, and did you know right away? Was it like, okay, I think I might be filling a shoe that's not mine. And it's like, I have to actually be Michael and speak based off of Michael's experiences, based off Michael,
Yeah, I think once I got a lot more comfortable with, because for me, remember, like I'm starting from like the bottom, man. Like meaning like I already got my first paid. So we figured out the business side of it before we figured out the confidence. I already got my first paid speaking engagement before I got my first keynote written. Like to the way I wanted it to. And I was still scared as heck, man. It was very debilitating. And so I was, like I said, I still, to everyone, it's like, oh, you did a good job, that. But to me, it's like I look back at myself on video. I'm like, dude, that is not me. Like, I'm just like, I'm like playing a part.
Yep.
You're literally playing. Yeah. So it took a while to find. It was, I don't remember a specific moment, but of where I could say that transition happened. But it was just like, as I got comfortable with doing the speaking, where now I wasn't thinking about myself anymore, then now I can look back at a film and I'm like, that's
okay, so this was the initial conversation I had in my head that I shouldn't have had. And pull it back, and then you're like, okay, back to the drawing board. Like, pull yourself up. Nobody else is going to do it for you. Let's go. What's next?
Yep. And that's a lot of people I think are just afraid to be even seen, to be in that, to go through that, like that period of where you suck really bad on social media and on your videos and on stage and whatever it is. And a lot of people are just not willing to do that. And so they just procrastinate or put it off. People do it with writing all the time. People, ask me about, the writing aspect of it too. And it's just like, sit down and write. Like, sit down. One, you're probably trying too hard to sound like a book that you read, or trying too hard to sound like another author. And so you're not able to find your own voice. You're not able to focus on what you want to say. But two, I think you're not willing to let people see your work and critique it.
Yep.
And so you just never put it out there. You're always it's always a work in progress. 5-6 years down the road, it's still a work in progress. Not releasing a book.
You know how many guys I know like that?
Yeah. It's really easy to get caught up in that. And that's a killer.
Well, and then ultimately it goes back to that, the drawing board. Like, what's next on the goal? Like, or on the board? Like, okay, yes, I failed here. I get it.
Yeah.
Do I take this existing goal where I failed? Like, I don't want to say fail. Failure is kind of a necessary thing. Where I let it slip through. Do I break it down into smaller segments that allow me to actually fill that? Right? Am I pushing too hard for me to get this done within a year? Do I break it down into a monthly, a daily, a weekly thing that I have to do? And does that put me closer to it? Sometimes the goals people set are either too big and they never hit them, or they're so small that they hit them and they're never find satisfaction in it and they just move on. So. Again, dude, I've done this. I do this all the time. Like, hey, what worked really well last year? Or I'll look at a month that I did really well. What was I doing that particular month or in the months before where November was killer, right? What was I doing in September, October prior to that ultimately, led to that point. So I think if you're not doing that self-analysis, you're doing yourself a disservice. And you're also doing your audience, like in your particular scenario, right? You're doing your audience a disservice as well.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're a professional. So it's like, as a speaker, like my name is the business. And so it's like, no one's going to I don't have a boss breathing down my neck telling me, to hit numbers or telling me to write a certain amount of book or words per day. It's just like, I am my own. And so it's like, the way, when I start looking at that, like, if I want to get out to the level I want to get out there to, like, the only one that's going to push me is myself. And so I am constantly analyzing, looking back, where do I get better? How do I push myself? How do I keep breaking out of this shell that I'm in and keep pushing myself? Yeah.
Well, this was completely unrelated, but this just came to my mind. How you're married? What is that like with Kenzie being like? I mean, look, you from the perspective of somebody that wants to break through in some sort of entrepreneurial route, and having a partner that supports them. Because, dude, I'm telling you, first couple of years for me, and my wife's really good about it. She's like, "Hey, God will come through. It'll take, and he does, right, and it works together. How do you guys have? I know there's always, places where you're kind of up hitting a wall.
For sure.
What is that like with like each of you guys supporting each other on like how far you've come along? Do you have a way of looking back, like, hey, listen, these are the victories over the last 12 months. Like, don't stick here because, and don't overlook this and stay here, in this particular moment. What's that look like for you?
That's huge, man. Well, first of all, what you said at the beginning is when she says, God will come through. That's important, man. Like, for anybody who's listening, especially young dudes out there, get yourself a woman that will put God. We'll understand.
If you're gonna record anything or save anything out of this video, let that be it.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it really comes down to it. Because sometimes you don't know. Sometimes it's like you can push all you want. You don't know when it's gonna happen, what's gonna happen. That's number one. That's priority. But we always keep perspective, man. That's huge. Like, and what I mean is like, because I'm the one in our, because we're working together on this business. Like, I think we've now figured each other, or I can tell when she's losing hope, or not when she's losing hope, but when she's feeling a little bit like things aren't, like, is this gonna happen for us? And she can tell when I do it. And so like, I think we've like figured out like, by a certain language that we use, it's just like, oh, she's kind of, and so like, I'm like, hey, remember when we used to only talk about like getting our first paid speaking engagement, getting paid to fly, like, and then we should be like, and so we just started going back through our wins immediately. And that it's just like, when you do that, if you can go back and you can take a look at what the wins, the things that you've done, and then it's just like, holy crap, like, Holy smokes. A lot of the things that we said we were going to do, like we've already done it. So
yeah.
like,
You've
why
already hit
wouldn't
that.
these next thing happen? It's just a matter of time. We gotta be patient. Yeah. And then she's really good at seeing that in me where like, if I'm starting to like, man, like get frustrated, get it. Cause what happens is when it's not happening for you, what do? You start kind of finding other things to avenues. And I start finding distractions like, oh, I should start doing courses. And so what I do is I start pulling myself away from that main goal, which is to write my books, sell my books, and get on stages.
You start allowing little compromises in your
yeah,
mind.
exactly. You start compromising. You start finding other things to do with your time. But what happens is they all start pulling you away from your main goal in the first place. And so she's very good at seeing that. And like,
And the only way that really comes is from you having spent time with that person, for them to know you and for you to know them. This isn't something that you're just gonna one day be like, oh, it just fell into. She was wrong for the entire ride. Yeah. And she gets to reap the rewards, but it took the both of you.
Well, she works just as hard as me, man.
Yeah.
She gets on the phone calls with the clients. She schedules, she gets all the flights, she does all the email, and she, I at the beginning I had to sell her on the dream for sure, because this is not a proven road that we follow. This is not like, oh, go get a job, you get a paycheck on Friday. Like this is, hey, I'm gonna do this thing for these next 6 months. Someone's gonna pay us eventually, I promise. So I had to sell her on that, but I think after we got some of those wins and we saw the progress, now she's sold out on it too, and she can see it. We see it unfold, and
it requires commitment from both of you guys.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I know personally, guys that compromise, like specific in the music industry, where it's just like you were producing a certain kind of music, and you even said like, hey, I am this kind of a producer. I don't want to be specific because I don't want to someone's going to see this. Like, this is the kind of music I want to produce because this is the vision, this is the goal. And then 6 months later, when it didn't work out, now you just change your sound, you change your music, it's just like, wait, I thought
I'm gonna stop you. This was just a season.
Yeah. Yeah. But and I know it just comes from the lack of patience, and that's it. And so it's just like, it didn't work out quick enough. And so now you just totally changed who you are. You totally gave up on your values because you were like, hey, I'm producing this music for God. Like, I want to be a faith-based rapper, whatever it was. And now you just, you gave up on it that quickly. So it's like, what was the mission in the first place? You were just saying that maybe as a selling point, but it's just like, it sucks to see.
That's interesting, because I just had that conversation with somebody else, and he was like, he was so adamant about this new direction he was taking in his life. And then like 6 months later, he's like, oh, you know what? I've moved on to this. I think it was just a season in my life. God just wanted me there for just that period for me to learn. I'm like, bro, 6 months was hardly enough time for you to get your feet wet.
Yeah.
Like you really gotta spend some time in there. You didn't even give it the ability to produce fruit. Like you just hardly even planted any seeds, right? So I think it's that lack of commitment, that lack of time, putting in that faith and knowing it's gonna come together.
It's tough, especially for young kids, because it's tough because we're living in a world where, man, it's just
like I gotta get it now.
Yeah, well, within a second, you scroll through Instagram, you see 10, 15, 20 speakers, writers that are just killing it. And you're like, and immediately, no matter what you've done or what you've accomplished, you're like, you're behind. Shoot, I'm behind. And so these kids are seeing kids their age going out there and killing it and doing videos or music or writing or, whatever it is that they're doing. And so the pressure's on them, and it's just like, that's why you have to cut things away. Like if it's good to look at something and use it as inspiration, like that's what I want to do. But if you spend too much time looking at that, you're falling off your own path.
Now,
like
now you're discouraged because you haven't made it. You haven't done it. It's been 3 months. I got nothing coming out of it. It's like, dude, 3 months?
Yeah.
I'm still building the website 3 months into I had no idea what I was doing.
Seriously,
man, that's really good. That's some good stuff. What going forward? I know you're a man of vision. You've got, I know you've got things in place. What's next for you? You've got, the books that are in place. Do you have, maybe it's a goal you don't want to disclose, because sometimes I have certain things I'm like, hey, this is just what I'm working on. But what's the next 1 year and 5 year look like for you? Are you shooting somewhere out to be on a larger scale? Are you going full broadcasting? Like, what is it?
Yeah, I mean, for me the goal is not going to change. Hopefully, ever. Yeah, it's just getting on more and bigger stages, and just to be able to impact people. I know the power of social media. I've seen it just recently in the last couple of weeks, like we were talking about.
I mentioned that before the camera came on, and I was like, we follow each other. We engage on social media quite a bit, talking DMs and kind of encourage and share things to each other. But I got on like 2 weeks ago, and you had like, I don't know, like 4,000 or 5,000 followers. I'm like, that's significant.
900.
Or did you have
before that video? I had 900 followers.
And then you post a story. You're like, oh man, one of my videos just hit 1 million views. Yeah. And then as we're getting near to getting together and actually shooting this thing, I get on Mike's on your page, and I was like, well, what's he done recently? I'm like, holy smokes, homie's got like 12,000 followers. Last time I was on, he had just a couple thousand. So in a matter of just boom, a couple weeks, you can go from just grinding to all of a sudden you got a blue check mark, right? I know you're not there yet, but whatever that is, and I know that's not the end goal, but the point is like, dude, I've been watching you do it for years, and that many years down the road, all of a sudden some breaks and it opens up, right? And things just start to move and come in your direction.
Yeah. And so that's going back to the goal for the year for 5 years. Yeah, is just to keep expanding and using because I know speakers that, like, personal guys that I learned from as well, that are more local, that I sat down, had some coffee with, that are just, they've been doing it for 10 years, but they're still playing at a level of where, like, now I've hit, but I want to, like, because for me it's like, if I'm going to do this, I might as well go big. Like, if I'm not trying to be like Ed Milet or Eric Thomas or Ike Johnson, then what am I doing? Like, I want to impact people, but at the same time, I want to build the business side of it. There's things, personal dreams and goals and things I want to do for my family. I got, a lot of things I want to do. And so, that's the goal, is to now try to use the social media side of it. Because these guys that I'm talking about don't use social media. They just, they've got like a good clientele base, word of mouth.
Just maintaining at this point.
Yeah, and maybe they're happy with it. And it's for them, but for me, it's like, if I'm going to be a motovational speaker, like, I might as well.
I want to be the motivational
speaker. Exactly. Might as well go, for the high score, and so, so that's the goal, is to do that. But at the same time, never just be comfortable with, we're getting our speaking engagements, but it's like, okay, how do I expand? How do I connect with a Bernard Bouchard or an Ed Milet? And how do I speak on his stage? How do I, get connected with these guys, go to their conferences? Because I know that's where you can really start connecting and
that's huge,
and getting a following. And so, so
you only got to get a repost from Ed Milet.
Yeah, exactly.
For your big deal.
Yeah, and in order to do that, you got to just keep grinding and doing your thing and getting really good at it.
Until you show up in his Explore page.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's my thing. Is just the goal doesn't change. It's the same goal. It's to be on stages and to continue writing books, because I get the feedback and I see the impact that it has on people, which is humbling, because I'll have people 40 years older than me, telling me about and sending me emails about how much the book inspired. And it's just like, that's really humbling, because that's just like, wow. Like, so it just reminds me there's a weight on my shoulders that I have to carry so I have to be true to myself, true to who I am, true to the original God-given purpose and vision. But at the same time, like, always like facing upward, always trying to grow, always, trying to impact and, get out there more. So,
that's good.
Yeah. And I want to get a pilot's license.
You want to get a
That's the goal for the year.
Hey, you know what? If it helps you any, the headset on you looks really good.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Listen, I want to. By the way, man, pilot's license. Are you going, like, you're talking to like a little guy where you can fly out?
Yeah, down to right here, Vancouver. Yeah, so it's like it costs about $8,000 for like at the end of because you pay per flight. Yeah, and so it's something I've been talking about since I was a kid. When we were kids, we were pretty poor, so our entertainment in the evenings, we also didn't have a TV, so entertainment in the evenings was my dad would walk us all out. Remember on Mill Plain, where now it's like a adult care facility, but it used to be an airport over there.
Yeah, on 136.
Yeah, so that was like our backyard. So we'd walk out there as a family. Mom would make snacks, and we would watch airplanes take off. And
everybody that's watching this, where Mike is talking about his successes, I want you to recognize the background where that came from, because going outside and watching the planes fly,
that was our family,
as opposed to everything you've got at your fingertips right now. Yeah. Good for you, man.
Yeah. So it's been a dream since I was a kid. So yeah,
I'm slightly sketched out by those little airplanes.
I am too.
Are you?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a fear you're overcoming.
It is. Yeah. I was getting on a big jet, dude. I was terrified. Yeah. Until I started doing it a lot.
Have you? Well, have you flown into one of these little guys?
Yeah, I did. We were in Alaska working, and we just walked over to a little hangar.
Does it make you uneasy flying in that?
Dude, it freaked me out, because the guy comes out there, he brushes the ice off with the broom. and he wheeled the whole plane out by just like by his hands. So
I thought my experience.
I'm
was
like,
scary.
I weigh
You
more
just
than
topped
this.
it.
I weigh more than this plane. He literally pulled it out and brushed the. And so it's like it's me, this big guy Jason that we used to work with, and my brother and the pilot, and we're just like literally like this smashed into this thing. We were flying over some glaciers, but. So it was freaky, but I was like, at least they can, if the engine shuts down, they can glide. So
Yeah. Well, yeah. I thought my experience was not even nearly as close. Dude, the moment if I'm getting on a plane and they have to chip ice off of it, give me some sled dogs because I'm not doing this if there's snow on the ground. Yeah. But I have a couple of cousins that fly. A couple years ago, they're from out of state. They came in. They're like, hey, listen, because they're part of a club, and I guess wherever you are, as long as you are part of this club, you can get in there. You can, if the plane's available, you can take it and you can fly. Yeah. So
I gotta look into that.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. He and they both have pilot's licenses, and they came in. He's like, hey, listen, we're gonna go to the coast and get a burger. You want to roll? And I was like, oh, okay. Like they actually, that's what they call it. They call it the $100 burger because that's how much fuel you put into the plane. And then, so for us to our coast, it was an hour and a half drive. So we flew out of Hillsboro or Portland, some little airplane, some little strip there. 45-minute flight. We get out there, and they have this little hoopty on a private, little car that they use. So we jump in this car, we go down there, we get a burger, fly back. Yeah. But I'll tell you, it's probably one of the most uneasy experiences I've had. Because they're sitting in the front, they got the headsets on, they're communicating, they're doing, reading the gauges and doing what they're doing. I'm in the back seat, like, Jesus, if this is the way I go.
Renewing your faith.
I'm praying to God. I'm like, I got my hands up. I'm trying to act excited, I'm trying to get a smile on my face, but my stomach is flipping.
It's scary, dude.
Because it is so light that any gust of wind, like, you're cruising, and all of a sudden a little gust of wind hits you, and you're moving. All of a sudden you're like, you're just you're sideways, and I'm like, oh, is that okay? Like, oh yeah. And he's so chill about it. He was like, yeah, man. So this mountain pass that we're gonna go over, just a heads up, the wind, it comes in, it hits the mountain, and it has nowhere to go but up, so it's gonna hit us in the belly. So I'm in the back seat, just sweating bullets, dude. Yikes, and we're coming over the mountain line, and it hits us from the bottom. It's like a pop can. You're in the wind.
Aluminum, dude. Yeah.
I got back. I was like, fellas, that was really cool. I don't know if I want to do that again, but check mark. So good for you, man. Good for you.
What about yourself, man?
For myself, I think I have some big goals. I have a lot of things as far as like my family, my personal life. I do really. God's changed a lot in my life here in the last couple of years, and a lot has been opened up that I didn't even know was within myself. And just like you said, like, right, we're given those gifts, we're given those talents, and I want to spend a little bit more time on allowing that to come out and polish it, right? Because it's just like you have that biblical parable, that one talent, which well done in your book, man, well done in the book. If you guys are watching, make sure to talk about the first one. That's the one I read. That was incredible. I got to a couple. First of all, the emotion in I forget the boy's name. In going through, I felt where you said we kind of grew up poor. I felt that emotion through that kid, right? Where he was like, everything I had, it was taken away, right? I didn't have things, and there's all these kids, and I'm discouraged, and it's unfortunate I don't have this, and he kind of tries to run away, and then finds out the talents that are given to him, and it really starts to expand on it. So you did really well. And matter of fact, I get to one point. I'm not going to spoil it. I get to a point where he gets to the olive garden or into the trees. And he meets Jesus. And I'm laying in my bed and I'm reading this book, and my daughter comes in because she loves to read. And I start to kind of break it out to her, and I'm like, and I get to a point where he meets Jesus, and she asks me this question that ultimately it happens, right? What Jesus does with the kid. And I'm like,
did you feel where the book was going?
I didn't. I knew he was going to meet him, but I'm thinking, okay, so he's clearly a part of the story. And she asked me, and I'm like, oh my God, that's a really good question. And I'm like, if this is true, you might have just nailed it. So I'm like digging into it. So, man, the way it played out really, really, really well. A lot of thought went into it. I was expecting, Michael, that when the girl came back into the picture at the end, that there was going to be more. But I was like, well, that's it. You're going to leave me here.
Everyone's asking me about to write a sequel. Yeah,
so I felt like there was a sequel afterwards. So if you got something in mind, man, I'll bless you to go forward with it. But yeah, so for me personally, I've got some professional goals, some things I want to do with my family. I have stuff I'd love for my kids and I to do as far as ministry together. It's been on my mind a lot recently. It's a place where I'm finding myself more, and I just want my kids to be there with me when I do it. Right? I don't want my kids to follow Christ because I do, or for me to tell them to do it. I really want them to go out there and I want to see it firsthand.
Yeah, yeah.
So a lot, man. On my personal, on my business. Speaking. I do, and in that form, and I think that there's a lot. And I want to avoid saying I feel because I'm really past the feelings.
It's
based.
overused.
It's a feeling based conversations.
I feel like God's telling me.
I feel like God's calling me. I do, and I think that it's going to require more of my will and more of my personal application because. I know God's got a will for you. He's got a will for me. He's got a will for each and every single one of us. But then there's the will of man. And how much farther am I going to step in and apply that and put it to work, right? Because the talents are given. And if I can't use the little, right, how good am I going to do with the big? So it's going to start there. And, it's been the last couple of years where I'm just discovering so much where, I don't want to say discovering, where God's has been opening so much to me personally that I'm trying to spend more time there, spend less time in my head knowledge, right, of what I already know, what I've seen, my past experience, and allow to be completely guided by Him in whatever sphere that is, right, and not fight it because sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I don't know if that's me, but very cool, very well could be me, and I won't know that until I get into it.
Yeah, very cool. And you got a heck of a testimony. I don't know how much time we got left, but yeah, I used to go to. So I went to high school with your brother, George. Yeah. And I remember Eugene was always just known as, I think you show up to school like one day a week, man. You were just like popping into the parking lot at lunchtime.
Oh, that's your brother? Yeah. The guy that doesn't come around very much. Yeah, that's my brother.
But yeah, it's incredible just to see your story and your journey too, man. Because I also knew we had mutual friends and people that, and it's like there was a point where it'd be like, oh, what about, what's Eugene up to? And she's like, oh, Eugene.
Yeah. He's a write-off.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't talk about him anymore.
Yeah, dude. So it's really inspiring to see, because I know a lot of people who were write-offs and then stayed write-offs, and wrote themselves off. And
as a matter of fact, I think it's full disclosure. This was 20 years ago. Andre and I have left. Obviously, we're living different lives. He's, afterwards. This is how I met him. Clearly afterwards, everything fell into place, and he went in the military, got married. He's doing amazing things. Maybe I might even have him on at some point. He's doing amazing things, and obviously, my life fell into place, and I'm in a good spot right now. But this is actually how I met him in high school. So we're talking early 2000s. I'm really tight with your cousin Yuri, and. I took I was academically a really, really smart kid. And then I hit high school, met some people, and my life just went in a completely different direction. And one day, I don't know, Andre, one day they roll up on that dark blue Prelude. He was like the bad boy in town. Like he was the only guy with the all-wheel drive Prelude of that year. And Yuri was like...
Was it a fight?
No, there wasn't a fight. He came through, and I remember I was in the front yard. My dad was doing something in the garage, and Yuri and I were tight. He was like, "Hey, listen, this is my cousin Andre, Eugene, Andre. Listen, my cousin here needs some wheels." And I was like, "Okay, well, listen, like my dad's right here. We can have this conversation."
Oh, I see. So you had to go find some wheels.
Yeah. So like, I guess I was the guy, but it's really interesting to now look back. I'm like, man, I was like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Now I look at Andre. He goes on into the military. He goes into the services. Comes back. He just starts really heavy into restoration of the youth. Right. He's spending so much time with the boys. He's spending a lot more time with his faith. How much has come since then? So it's like, dude, you can how much has been done, and to really come forward and be like, okay, if you needed a gentle reminder of what God's done in your life, why don't you take a look back? Because a lot of those guys that I grew up with, then they're not around anymore. So man, it's pretty powerful. So that goes back to that question where you asked, is like I think there's a lot placed on me that I haven't really been able to break into just yet, and I'm on God's timing. I'm waiting for that to open up.
It's only a matter of time till it's going to be something where it's just going to click perfectly, your story and your testimony, who you are with where you are now. I think it's going to be powerful, and I mean, I know it already is. I know you're already using it, to impact people. But definitely keep your mind open.
So we'll see what God takes me, but I certainly don't want to close the door on anything, right? Because I have no idea what that could mean for me, for my wife, for my kids.
Absolutely.
I think I'm learning to rely less on my head knowledge when I'm walking in faith and just on the voice of God.
Awesome.
So, on a personal level, I was going to ask you this. Tell me what's going on with Michael. Tell me about something that's aside from business. Tell me about an embarrassing moment in your life recently.
I don't know if I could think of one from the top, or at least one that I'd want to say. But I'm learning, dude. I'm a talker. I talk too much. Like I just say stupid things. I'm very opinionated. I'm quick. I'm quick to like see something and say yeah.
Like, oh, shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. So I have a lot of different instances like that, but I'm learning as I'm getting a little bit older. I'm learning to shut my mouth and listen a little bit more, and not see a person and know where they're from and immediately think I know everything about them or everything about their situation, because I've said a lot of dumb things that, like, big, bite my tongue kind of moments. So I'm learning to not have as many of those embarrassing moments anymore. Yeah. But I have a lot of very specific things, but I'd rather not.
I just did one very same way. Bro, it was so I'll share it and we'll wrap up. I have a really, really good friend of mine. Matter of fact, him. I'm not going to say his name. That I grew up with. I've known him for a very long time. And when he was younger, he was engaged to this girl, and anyway, it didn't work out. Years later, he ends up getting engaged, gets married to this girl, and and he's like, "Hey, can you be the host at my wedding?" I'm like, "Yeah, bro. Like, I got you. Do you see where this is going? See where it's going?" And I was the morning or the day before, I'm talking to my wife. I'm like, "Man, my biggest fear is accidentally calling his new wife by the old girl's name, because like we've all grown up together." And I think I spoke it so much. I was so concerned, so afraid of doing it, that I'm doing the invite, and I legit invite him in by his name, and the new wife, which is super sweet, lover, by the ex fiance's name. And I say it, and I didn't even realize it came out of my mouth. And I'm like, I'm kind of a social dude. I'm strolling around saying hi to people, shaking hands. I'm like, I just feel my phone blowing up in my pocket. I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I'm like, I'll pull my phone out, and it's just like my messages are just like just blowing up. I'm like, what's going on? And one of the guys is like, bro, did you really just say that? And I'm like, oh shoot. And I start thinking back, and I start looking at everybody in the audience, and everybody's like, bro, what are you doing? Like, and dude, it was so awkward. Fortunately, he's a really good friend. She's amazing. We laughed it off, and like it's like every time we see each other, it's like a topic of conversation. They always make sure to throw a jab at me, which is like, okay, whatever. But my career as a wedding host ended there.
Yeah. That's a tough one, man. That'd be tough.
So yeah. But man, I'm really glad we got to sit down and really chat about this. A lot of gold. I'm really proud of what you're doing.
Appreciate it.
Well, I'll be sure and mention it on when I put it out as well. This is probably would have been one of my better books as of recently, because I love self-developmental stuff, but not to a degree where it's a David Goggins book, which are great and stuff like that. But it's more personal, right? It's applicable, especially for a faith-based person. I love it, man. Really proud of you. Love to see where you're going. Your social media is absolutely exploding. The audiences are getting bigger and bigger. You're clearly doing something right, and I have to applaud you. You're doing good, man. So
appreciate that, Eugene. Thanks for having me, man.
Yep. Likewise. Thanks for being on. Appreciate it.